5 Abandoned airplanes and war equipment in the world. One. Abandoned haunting seaplane. It's a beautiful seaplane abandoned between the sea and the desert of Saudi Arabia, and it's been left there for almost 50 years. The plane is a PBY-5A Catalina, a military American seaplane from the 1930s. It is located on a beach off the Strait of Tehran on the Saudi Arabia side of the entrance to the Gulf of Aqaba. Thanks to Adam, we get to know about it and its story. You too can propose a story to us. The aircraft is a PBY-5A model and was bought from the U.S. Navy by Thomas W. Kendall, a retired businessman who converted it to a luxury flying yacht. 2. Russia's abandoned space shuttles at the Baikonur Cosmodrome. Photographer has managed to gain access to the building housing the abandoned Soviet space shuttle program. Ralph Myers traveled to the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan and found the 2 crumbling, dust-covered craft that were built for the Buran orbital vehicle program back in the 1970s and 80s. The reusable spacecraft project began in 1974 but was formally suspended in 1993 after it completed just one unmanned orbital space flight in 1988. They are generally considered as a Soviet equivalent of the United States Space Shuttle, but in the Buran project, only the plane-shaped orbiter itself was theoretically reusable, and while Orbiter K-1 was recovered successfully after its first orbital flight in 1988, it was never reused. 3. Miraculous airplane crashes where everyone survived. The snowy mountains of western Canada near Haines Junction, Yukon, February 7, 1950. 1A. U.S. Air Force Douglas C-47D flies dangerously close to the ground, flying low through the valleys at breakneck speed. The pilot Donald King and his 9-man crew are looking for a missing plane which has disappeared in the harsh terrain of Canada's frozen north. Suddenly there's an unexpected downdraft and the C-47D is pushed down. King tries to pull up, but it's no good. The plane crashes on the snow-covered rocks. As the C-47D finally comes to a halt, King can hardly believe it. A huge snowfall has slowed the force of the crash landing and no one is hurt. Here lies a Curtiss C-46 Commando, also abandoned in Canada, but this one in Manitoba. It is one of more than the 15 aeroplanes which miraculously ended up on the ground after a heroic emergency landing. 4. Abandoned Russian helicopter base. When the USSR collapsed, a large number of abandoned military bases closed almost overnight. These bases have been left to rot, and many include large-scale military equipment. These Mi-24 helicopters that have been put out of operation are spending their final days rotting away. The Mi-24 was a first tactical machine designed by Mi and was in production until the 90s. After the collapse of the USSR, the manufacturers of different parts of the helicopter were separated by the borders of the newly formed ex-Soviet states. 5. Abandoned Soviet tanks in Ukraine. Need a tank to fend off the coming zombie apocalypse that everyone else is freaking out about? Make your way to the Kharkiv Armor Repair Facility in Ukraine, where you can have your pick of hundreds of Soviet-built T-64S, T-72S and T-80 tanks that look like they've been abandoned since the collapse of the Soviet Union. Can't afford the flight to Ukraine? Then click through the jump to check out photos of tanks as far as the eye can see that Pasha Itkin took when he broke into the abandoned-looking facility.